Today, I'm gonna go back in time a little bit to when I was shooting with lower megapixel DSLRs, and I'm gonna apply some of the cool, latest possible technology that Adobe's given us to edit those images in a new way. Well, hey everyone, it's Hudson. Welcome to this week's video. I'm gonna be just talking through some cool new editing tools that we've got, masking, super resolution, in the context of some older images that I love. You know, it's funny, I've been going through and editing a lot of the stuff from this year's workshops and trips that I've been on, and I'm just kind of blown away by, photographing with 60 and 46 megapixel sensors and the dynamic range that we have now. And it made me sort of think, as I was running through all the newfound tools that we have in Lightroom and Photoshop with their simplicity of use compared to what things used to be like, about some of the older images in my collection, and particularly some of the ones that I just wish I could be back and redo now with the tools that we have. And I started thinking, well, why not use some of the editing tools that we have now? A lot of people have been asking me for more editing videos, so here you guys go. I'm going to jump in, take a look at these images, and we'll just see what we can squeeze out of them with newfound tools. Now, first, I just want to remind everyone we've got office hours next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. It's going to be a big open Q&A. We had some questions left over from the last office hours. Big group get together on YouTube Live, on Zoom. You can sign up for that at hudsonhenry.com. You can click right here if you're into it. So I hope to see you there. All right, so let's just jump in and we'll do a little bit of editing. I'm here on my Mac Studio. I'm gonna lift my desk up a little bit since I'm standing. And I brought in some images. There's one from this just spectacular year in the Japanese gardens. And you can see by the resolution here, I was shooting with my D200. It's back in 2008. That's a date code. I was converting things to DNG back then, which I don't do anymore. I think I was zoomed in there. That was 100% view. Yeah, it's just not that many pixels, and we're here on a 4K screen. You know, there were some fun details. The tree, which was not nearly as famous back then, I'd only seen a couple of images of it, was beautiful. It had dropped a number of leaves. It was dry. I had this wonderful morning that was kind of overcast, as you can see, so the light was even. And I captured this 5-frame panoramic merger with my camera oriented vertically on the tripod with my D200 and a 12 to 24 millimeter lens. That's a DX sensor. And then I up-resed this, and this is hung in a lot of, commercial spaces, law offices. Most of my family has a print of this. It was one of my first images that I just loved back in 2008. Now that said, I thought about, what could we do with those original raw files? And so here are the 5 overlapping frames that I captured. I would love to have that. I've gone back to the gardens, and nowadays there's always a line of people wanting to photograph this tree, but I've just never seen conditions quite like it was in 2008. It was just beautiful. It was dry, the color was great, and again, that overcast morning. So I'm just going to work with what I got. You can see that the base file of this is barely 2600. It's not even 2600 pixels by 3900 pixels. It's very, very small. But that's one of the things that I did back in those days, was capture panoramas, both to get a wider scene, as I've done in this case, but also to get more resolution. And I've printed this 48 inches wide, and it's with up-resing in older software. We're gonna do it using super resolution now, and I'll show you my kind of process. Let's just walk through it and we'll see where we get. So I've got all 5 of these images selected in my library here in Lightroom Classic, and I'm gonna run up to Photo and choose Enhance. All right, and this is where you get to denoise, raw details, super resolution. And I'm going to choose super resolution. It's just going to up-res each one of these files. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say enhance those. I haven't even done anything else. Whatever edits have been done to these are going to be sort of undergirding just the raw processing that I originally did. I might revisit that a little bit once we get these super resolution files. We're basically creating new raw files. All right. Here they come. These should all be tagged blue too. I'm not sure. Well, the master panorama is. All right, so we're almost done creating the super resolution files. All right, it looks like we got to check them each carefully. I'm just gonna remove these from the quick collection I got. So that's my standard. If I go to this view here with the film strip, we'll just keep the super resolution file. That's a super resolution. You can see it in the file name, and it's much larger resolution, 5184 by 7744. I'm going to go ahead and remove the standard file from my collection. Get rid of that one. Get rid of that one. Get rid of that one. That one. So now we're looking at the 5 newly created super resolution files. And I'm just going to select all of those. Let's go to this central one and we'll jump into develop with it. All right. And, you know, it's got this old Adobe Camera Raw engine to it. I kind of want to update these. So let's go in here and we'll use, we'll just update the process. Update to current process version under settings. And that's going to change it so that we get our familiar highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, exposure, all right? And it's reset all the settings to zilch here. And what I'm going to do, just before I go through and process this, is I'm going to set the white and black point and just exposure a little bit. I'm going to hold down my Option key, and that shows me clipping masks. I can see as I'm holding the white slider, these are things that are blown out. I've lost the red color channel. There's a little bit of blown out white up at the top, but as I move the highlights and white sliders, I can get rid of those blown highlights. They're recoverable. All right, it's just light gray up there now. And then the black slider, you can see that we've got just a bit of pure black in the frame. That doesn't bother me to have a bit of pure black in the architecture of the tree. That contrast is what we're after. This is still a very contrasty image. And then we could maybe reduce contrast just ever so slightly and pull our shadows up just a little bit to get more detail in that tree trunk. And as I do that, you'll see we're kind of getting a little, that's looking good. I don't have any blown highlights or anything. All right, so once I've done all that, I might actually just pull saturation back. Well, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually go into my color mixer. And I like to choose, there's point colors, sometimes the default. I like to choose the mixer, and I like to adjust hue, saturation, and luminance. This is kind of the old school controls. And I might just mess around a little bit with the hue of these leaves, because I think they're just a little toward yellow, and I'd like them to be just a little more orangey, but then a little less saturated. All right, just like that. I find that the older I get, the less saturation I have in my images. So just out of the camera, it was a little saturated. The green is a little on the yellow side, so I'm going to just take my targeted adjustment tool. That's what this is. That's what I've been doing. I click that little targeted adjustment tool, and then when I hover over the color that I want to manipulate, I click, and just moving up moves those sliders to the right to kind of take a little yellow out and make my greens a little more green. And then saturation, I can click the saturation button, and that's just going to saturate the color. I want to saturate the greens a little more to match those oranges. And that's looking pretty good to me. All right, it looks really good. And so now all I want to do is synchronize every possible setting. I'm going to check all so that all of these images are processed identically. They were all captured at the identical shutter speed. They were all captured at the, wow, I shot this at 20 millimeters. Yep, that's interesting. I thought I could have sworn I shot this with the 12 to 24, but apparently not. Anyhow, so we've synchronized all these. All of our settings will be identical. And now I just want to, I could do this from the grid view in the library. I just pushed the G key to get to the grid view in the library. We were in develop. I could go to library up here, and then I could click the grid icon here, but also the G key is just a shortcut. And I've got all of these selected, all right? And what I'm going to go ahead and do is say photo merge to panorama, all right? And it's going to generate a preview for me. Because these files are so small, it won't take it very long. And this is a great candidate for this kind of boundary warp. You can see I was practicing what I preach with panoramas. I went wider than I needed to. If another photographer's tripod is over here, I've got some blurred out of focus, too close elements over here. I photographed it wider than I might need to. I can hit fill edges to fill in whatever's left. That looks good. There's not much distortion to worry about in a natural scene like this. I mean, it can be distorted and you won't notice. It's just that kind of a scene. So I'm gonna go ahead and say merge. It's gonna create a stack. I'm also gonna make these blue because they should be colored, set color level to blue. I just right click to that group of images and that way they're all blue like they should be. I code all my panoramas and partial panoramas as blue. All right, so here we go. It's creating that pano. Shouldn't take too long yet. It's moving pretty fast. There it is. Boom. We've got it. All right. Now we can go back into develop. I can push the D key. That's my shortcut for develop. It's going to take it a minute to resolve. You can see we've got now 15,000 pixels by 6,983. Well, I'm going to crop it a little bit. All right. I can click this. I could also use the R key. That's the shortcut key for crop in Lightroom. But I'm going to come over, get some of those out of focus elements removed. I'm looking at this little leaf here. I'm doing my edge patrol. Kind of like that little leaf. So I'm going to stop right about in there. And I want to get rid of my road and the bamboo fence and some of these blurred leaves that are too close to the camera and maybe catching a little wind down here on the bottom right. All right, you can see I stopped down to F16. Probably have some diffraction induced by that, but that's just what I did back in 2008. And I'm coming down like so, although it did tend to get everything from the foreground to the background in focus. So that was a trick from the film days forward. And I'm gonna, I'll come in like so, right about like that. I'm getting rid of some of this white sky up there. I don't want to get rid of all of it, but something like that. I'll go ahead and press enter to accept that. Now we're at 12,845 by 6,748. Let's just open up the calculator really fast and say 12,845, enter, 6,740, backspace, 48. We're looking at 86 megapixels suddenly, which is not too bad for a 5-image panorama captured with a 10 megapixel camera. And if we have a look here, it holds up just as well from a sharpness and quality perspective, maybe better than my original, which that looks over sharpened and rough to me. Wow. So my editing skills have increased, thankfully. All right. So now, and I kind of like the natural look of this without even hardly doing any editing. It's just looking really nice. All right. I don't think there's any need to do a whole lot here. We might take shadows up just a little bit more. We might take contrast up a little bit. I think that your highlights could come down just a smidge more. God, I love the detail in all the leaves. Beautiful. It's just looking great. So, I might go in and do just a little more cleanup. If I can use the power of Photoshop a little bit. Now that I've got this thing raw processed the way that I like it, I might take saturation just globally down a smidge more. I'm just not a huge saturation hound these days. I'm really after that natural look. Sometimes nature looks too saturated for me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, edit in Photoshop 2024. And that's going to open up Photoshop for me with a copy of this image in Photoshop document form. And I'm here in my single screen Photoshop view. Usually I put all my control panels and tools on the left screen and keep the image really big in the right screen. You can always press the tab key to get rid of everything, right? And you can zoom in with Command or Control plus, Command or Control minus. You can fit it to the screen with Command 0. Fits the image to the screen, or Control 0. The tab key, again, brings your tools up and puts them down. And what I'd like to use is this remove tool. This is like a magic tool. If you don't see it, it could also be the spot healing brush. So you can choose which one you're using by long clicking these tools. And I'm going to use the remove tool here just for a few little things. And I've got my tool active, and I can zoom in again with the Command plus, run up here, and I'd like to just get rid of this bit of brightness on the edge, this bit of bright sky. So I'm just gonna kind of hover over it and paint it in pink like that and see what happens here. Not bad. I might redo that little bit right there. I'm not sure. I'm going to undo that. Let's just do one at a time. Sometimes that's the better way to go. Trying to do too much at once. That's much better. And then this little guy over here, like so. Yeah, nice. Not too much to that. Let's run down here. I noticed there were some leaves that were blowing in the wind. I'm going to use that same tool, like so. And you know, if you want to refine it a little bit, you could take some time with the clone tool and refine it a bit more. Get rid of that kind of blurred bit of leaf. Get rid of this blurred leaf. I'd like to do these one at a time with the remove tool. If you try to do too much at once, as you just saw, things go a little wonky. Sometimes multiple brush strokes can be a good thing, like that. Look at that. And then just right here, that leaf. I don't mind these being slightly blurred on the edge. This thing looked good before at 44-inch printing. I think it's going to look significantly better now. Now you come back out and wow, that looks awesome. I'm liking it. All right, so there you go. That, to me, if we just go ahead and hit save, I'm hitting Command S. You could also go up to File and Save, and you can see Command S, Control S for the Mac, for the PC. And then if we go ahead and close this down and jump back into Lightroom, it's saved as a Photoshop document alongside all the other files in here. Pretty awesome. We have just gotten more resolution than in the past. You know, and it's not, you know, would I love to go back and photograph this with my Z9 and the 14-24 on a day like this? Absolutely. But I just squeezed a lot more quality out of an image that I love from 16 years ago, captured with a 10 megapixel camera. All right, let's run through one more. Let's look at this image of a California condor in Utah. This is one of the wild populations in Utah. And I think I moved up for wildlife photography to a D300S at this point. So I think we're up to 12 megapixels here. And I was shooting with my 70-200 2.8 VR, the original 70-200 VR lens from Nikon, and a 1.4 teleconverter. So I think I was out at 340 millimeters. Yep. I don't know why I was at f10. You'd have to ask Hudson of 14 years ago what he was thinking there, but for some reason I was. I would definitely be shooting this with my 400-2.8 at 2.8 these days, but you know, if you're happy with the images that you captured, you know, 14, 15 years ago, then you're probably doing something wrong. You're wishing you could go back and reshoot it. So, you know, I just want to see what I can do with the power of masking, and let's just hit it with super resolution too. Why not get some more resolution out of this? I just never seem to find that it does me any harm. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to hit enhance again. We'll do our super resolution move. I'm not even going to look at it. I'm just going to let it run. And we go from 4,288 by 2848 to, here comes our super resolution for 8,576 bits. Doubled the resolution. All right. So, and it looks pretty sharp to me. I might jump in after doing that and just do a tiny bit of detail work. I'm going to hold down the Option key when I do that. Whenever I do sharpening and noise reduction, I hold down the Option key, the Alt key on PC, and then when I touch each of these controls, I get a special view. When I touch sharpening, I get black and white, which the color can sometimes distract you during your sharpening work. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that slider. This was shot at 200 ISO with the D300, but I'll bet you that even at 200 ISO on the D200, there's more noise than we're used to at like 800 ISO with our modern sensors. Oh, no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's more like 400 or 500 ISO. You can still see that there's noise in that clean background. And so what I'm doing right here, for those that aren't used to it, is I'm looking with the Option key held down, Alt for the PC, at the masking slider. And I'm saying I don't want to apply sharpening to any details smaller than where I set this bar, okay? And that can show me noise. Then I might want to grab my luminance noise slider and pull it a little bit, which blurs fine detail, and then I can back off just a little bit on my masking slider and be sharpening a bit more detail in my scene, all right? I'm choosing what's getting sharpened and what's getting blurred a little bit to remove noise. What I don't want to do is sharpen noise, because then I'm just going to accentuate sensor noise, and I don't think sensor noise was as pretty back in 2010 as it is in 2024, not that we love it now. All right, so there we go. We got that. Let's have a look at our basic controls. I think I'd updated this one. You know what, I'll go ahead and I'll reset. I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to reset the tone and presence settings and the white balance. It was shot at cloudy, so we've got that going for us, all right? So let's just process this from straight out of the camera, okay? There's no masks applied. We've done a little detail work. So we'll go in here. I'm going to set the white point and black point. That is always my starting point. And there's a little bit of blown out highlights, just specular highlights in the tips of the feathers. I'm going to pull whites a little bit, pull highlights a little bit. You can see that just disappearing pretty much. We can go a little bit more. I think I can get rid of those. Yep, pretty much. There might be a little bit of specular highlight. No, I think we're pretty good. I think we're safe. All right, and then, you know, just looking at it, I can pull contrast down. Yeah, there's detail in these brightly lit feathers that were catching the sun. It was in this wonderful canyon. And then shadows, we could pull shadows up a little bit. I'm really looking at the bird, because I know I'm going to do something different with the background. I'm really going to edit this differently. And then blacks, probably should have done blacks first. I'm going to pull the black slider. I really want to maximize contrast. The difference between white point and black point in this image is global contrast. And there I'm starting to get a little bit of black. You can see the clipping when I'm holding down that Option key and I'm sliding my slider. You can start to see it's clipping right in here in the blackest part of the image. I'm fine having a little bit of black in my file. That looks good when you print. All right, I'm pull contrast just a little bit more, and I'm liking how my bird's looking. It looks really, really good. All right. So now I'm going to play around with a little masking. I love the power of masking in that they've given us in Lightroom. And I'm just going to go ahead. You know, sometimes I select background, sometimes I select subject and invert. I'm going to go ahead and try background. And it's grabbing some of his feathers that are a little more out of focus in the back here, but it doesn't matter to me if those get a little blackened. The important thing is that it's got his body and his head. I think that's fine. I'm going to just play around with this a little bit by dropping the global exposure on the background a bit. Oh yeah, that looks fine. And I can boost contrast a smidge. And I like the color in here, but I'm going to just tone it down a little bit just because I don't want it competing with my bird too much and that beautiful red eye. I just want to make it a little more subtle. And that old 70-200 VR lens had a pretty nice depth of field, you know, even at f10, which I mean, with the 1.4 teleconverter, it would have been an f4 lens, but still, I'd stop down for some reason. All right, unknown to me. All right, and then I could go ahead and, if I wanted to, I'm going to make my masking controls a little bigger here with that little arrow key. I could create a new mask, and I could say select subject, and it's pretty much doing the opposite. And if I wanted to just boost his shadows a little bit more, play around with contrast individually from the background, it would be that easy. That's looking pretty good to me. I might take the highlights down just a little bit more for those tips of the feathers on this bird. But then I'd like to make the eye pop just a little bit more. And I'm going to create a mask selecting object. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint around the eye. I don't even have to be precise. It's looking for the object that it thinks I'm after. And there it is. Boom. And what we could do here is just bump shadows up a little tiny bit, right? Maybe bring exposure up a little, just a smidge, contrast up. Just make that eye pop out a little bit more from the scene. And we can turn the little mask on and off. It's not massive, but it's a little shift. I think I might want to just add a little bit of contrast too, a little bit more contrast. Often when I boost shadows or boost exposure, boosting contrast does a nice thing too. Yeah, that looks great. All right. So then I think the piece de la resistance for me would be to go in here and do a radial gradient, okay? So this is basically a technique that I use a lot for vignetting. And what you do is you just, once you've got that tool open, you click and you drag, and you'll see this masked circle come in. And then the red part's showing you what's being applied. And you can control its feather, you know, how gradual or not gradual is the transition from this masked circle you've created to the background. And I think that 50% often works well. And then what I want to do actually is invert it. So I want to mask the edges and leave our bird's face unaffected. All right, there we go. It's that old-fashioned kind of vignette where we say the center of the photo is what's important to us, or what we choose to be the center of the photo. And I can kind of control how that's laid out here, both with the vignette, the feather tool, and these control points on the circles. The outer edge, beyond the outer edge, the effect is 100% applied. In the inside circle, none of it is applied, and it's fading through that feathered region between the outer and the inner circles. And all I'm going to do is pull exposure down a little bit. And you see, I don't want it to be noticeable. I don't want you to go, ooh, you know, you really applied a vignette on that. I want it to be very subtle, but I want it to grab your attention, right? I mean, I just want the bird to grab your attention. All right, so there we go. So if I hit my before button, let's close down the masking tools. Hit my before, that's what we started with. This is what we've got. Wow. The tools have improved. And you know, maybe some of my thoughts and ideas with using them in a more nuanced way. And we've also taken our resolution from that 12 megapixels of the D300S to, what do we have here? 8,576 enter times 5,696 times 48 megapixels. So, you know, I'm not going to say this rivals a Z9 photo, but it's a lot closer to what I'd be capturing today. You know, again, I'd love to get back there and have a close-up opportunity with this bird again with the new tools that I have, that 400 2.8S. But, you know, it's fun to take these tools that we have in our kit and apply them to some of our favorite images from the past. And I think that as you go through and look through some of your older images, you're going to realize, ooh, that wasn't as sharp and as in focus as I thought it was. Or this image, you know, really, gosh, what was I thinking? There's some compositional problems with it. And you'll be probably a harsh critic of yourself on images older than 5 years, but some of your favorite ones deserve a trip through all the newfound tools that we have at our disposal. So hope this maybe inspires you to go take a look at some of your own stuff with a fresh eye and fresh tools. Remember, we got office hours this Tuesday. I think it's the 18th of June, and we're going to be talking about all of your questions. We'll talk some Nikon stuff. We'll probably talk some Adobe stuff. There's been a lot of hullabaloo over some very poorly worded terms of service changes that I think is a little bit of a storm in a teacup, but we can talk about that a little bit. You can join us on Zoom. You can join us on YouTube Live. I put the link up earlier. It's also in this video's full description, along with links to all of the tools and equipment that I use, swear by, and stand by, and those links help us out, so thanks for using them. All right, everybody. I hope you're all staying creative, staying safe, and we'll see you next week.